I'm your host, ObjectivelyDan, and joining me today for another fantastic, exciting episode is the legendary BionicDance.
Hello.
Woo! How's it going, Kate?
Oh, I've definitely been worse. How about yourself?
That's wonderful. That's the best. When you ask someone how they're doing, that's exactly what you want to hear. So in case you've been under a rock, BionicDance has been on the internet a lot longer than this show's been around. She's been making content on all sorts of things, talking about religion and science and stuff for a long time on YouTube. She's collaborated with a whole bunch of other people as well, and she's just awesome. And we recently got to meet at Faithless Forum for the first time, which was really cool. And I was like, hey, you should come on this show. And now she's on the show. So that's how this whole operation started. And yeah, welcome to the show, Kate.
Thanks. Great to be here.
Yeah.
And it was great to meet at Faithless Forum. Faithless Forum was an absolute blast. So if you get the chance to go next year, please do.
Yes, it was so much fun. And yeah, this was my second time going. I went last year and just seeing, I got to tell you, I love seeing the people come out, the people who watch the content and stuff. And I also just love seeing all the other content creators and stuff. And we get to hang out because a lot of these people I talk to on the internet every day and stuff. And it's so nice to see these people in real life. And you get to meet cool connections like Kate here. So yeah, Kate, what's been going on with you and your channel? Like what kind of content you're making? What's up with that?
Well, my format has changed a lot over the years, but for the last couple, it's basically been I find someone who's saying something completely chowder-headed and then debunk the crap out of what they said. Mm-hmm. It's actually a lot of fun because I get to refine my arguments as I go. And because people make the same arguments. Theists have been making the same arguments for hundreds of years. And on the internet, they've been doing it for, well, as long as YouTube's been around and longer. Mm-hmm. So their arguments don't change much. It's always an absolute blast to find someone who's got a new reason why they believe in God. But because I've been answering the same arguments over and over and over for more than a decade, I've been able to refine my responses so that I say and a lot less.
Yeah.
And I've also been able to just find new ways, new holes in their armor to get under.
Mm-hmm. Do you tend to gravitate around certain kinds of people or certain kinds of arguments? Like, I guess I know you talk a lot about Christianity, but like, is there other kinds of philosophy and stuff that you delve into, or do you prefer talking about kind of the more religious kinds of things?
Well, the thing that I have perhaps the biggest issue with in terms of arguments is faith, the requirement of faith, that you can't have the proof of a God's existence. And I like to attack that particular, I guess I'll say fallacious position. But also a lot of my focus is on people who use religion as an excuse to treat other people horribly. Because I figure if I can debunk religious arguments, that they'll have to start justifying their bigotry to themselves rather than having this religious excuse for it. Mm-hmm. And so generally speaking, those are my targets. I mean, yeah, I tend to look at Christianity more than any other religion simply because I live in the United States, and the United States is majority Christian, at least as far as the religions people follow when they follow a religion. And so Christianity is usually my target. But when I see other people from other religions doing the same sorts of things to other people, then I look at their beliefs and how I can debunk those as well. I've found it's very rare for Jewish people to be making nuisances of themselves in this way, so I rarely end up talking to them or addressing their arguments, because I figure, hey, if they're playing nicely with the other kids, I can leave them alone. I may not agree with what they believe in, but there's no reason to attack them.
You know, that's interesting because, like, I think there's kind of a difference in culture between the people who are really into the apologetics and who are really into the kind of arguments and stuff, and then just the kind of casual believers and stuff. I definitely grew up in a Methodist Baptist home. It's kind of weird. And I never knew the word apologetics till at least I got to like college, I'm pretty sure. Maybe it came up in the youth group a few times. And like I had heard some arguments here and there growing up, and definitely through Bible studies and things, I heard a lot of the context for a lot of these Bible verses and stuff. but the actual study of like the argumentation and stuff and the reasons why people should believe in like this and that was completely different from my experience. I kind of had explained faith kind of the same way you did. It was just kind of an implicit trust in something. And this is a conversation I've been having with a lot of people lately about how people use this word faith to describe their beliefs, because it turns out that other people have been using it in other ways, and hearing other people kind of explain how they're using it and how they come to the conclusions that they do, being that, there's a God or Christianity is real in some sense, is really interesting, because I think there is a tendency, even as a Christian, to grow up in the sectarian kind of, I grew up in this specific denominational worldview, and then you don't really hear about these other kinds of denominational worldviews because you didn't go to those churches, But on the internet, as an atheist, I get to look at all the stuff and read all of the things, so it's just great. Mm.
Before my parents adopted me, he was like, well, screw that crap. And so I watched him try just about every religion under the sun when I was a kid, but he didn't make me or my mom go on that journey with him. And I think more than anything, that helped me think, wow, religion is kind of goofy. Just because I saw so much of it, I didn't have to participate. So I'm just looking at it from the outside. And that kind of helps a person realize that, it's really easy to switch from one to the other if you're of a mind to, and if no one's forcing it on you. In my sillier moments, I like to tell people that I'm a Lex Lutheran, but that's just me being a geekatron over here.
Yeah.
No, but it's also kind of strange having grown up with no religion when you're in an atheist activism sort of community, because everyone else seems to have this story of their journey from faith to atheism. A lot of people have endured abuse. A lot of people really struggled with the fact that some people are still afraid that they're going to go to hell, even though they don't believe in a God anymore, just because of how indoctrinated they were. And when I hear these stories and I see people actually bonding over them, I kind of, in a weird way, feel left out. And I'm glad that I had the non-religious upbringing that I did. But at the same time, I don't have anything to say when people are talking about that. It's almost like they're in a support group and I'm just sitting there going, well, I can't include myself in this.
Yeah.
It's very strange, actually.
That's really interesting. Do you think, like, if we're talking about atheism as a movement, as a part of an activism, right? I mean, you've been in the activism scene for a while. Do you think you're a minority in being in the movement and not growing up in a religious tradition? Do you think more people in this movement actually came from religion than actually weren't part of any religion at all?
I do think that, yes. Just based on my interactions with people, the people who have told either me or other content creators, you helped me see the flaws in religion and become not religious anymore, and all of that. And the very few people who say, oh, I was never a theist of any sort. The number of polls I see on Facebook in groups addressing religion or specifically about atheism, where it says, what was your religion when you were younger? The always atheist group is almost always the smallest bar on those polls. In fact, sometimes I was always atheist isn't even included on there because it's assumed that everybody had a religion before they became an atheist. And that is an assumption that is really difficult to get past, not just with atheists, but also with theists, because a lot of their arguments revolve around the idea that an atheist is a lapsed theist, that there is a God-shaped hole in your brain somewhere that has to be filled with something. So yes, definitely a minority, for sure. I mean, not in any kind of political sense where I feel oppressed by it or anything, but definitely numerically speaking.
That's really interesting because I agree with you. I think most of the people who are doing this kind of activism and stuff came from a background of religion, at least to some degree. And I'm wondering because I have a sense when I'm talking to people, and maybe you have this too. Maybe I'm crazy, but I have a sense when people never really grew up religious. Like, I can kind of tell that you never grew up religious, and also kind of based on your videos. I think there's a difference in the sensitivity in which people talk about kind of these topics. I find, and again, this is just me spitballing, but it seems to me that the people who didn't grow up with religion, again, just like, will full on just slam the whole thing, just call the whole thing bunk, and just no shits given when they talk about a lot of these topics. When sometimes people who grow up in the religious world are a little more empathetic sometimes, but a little more like, oh yeah, like I had this experience and stuff, and this is where I'm at now. And everyone else is just kind of like, nah, I don't give a fuck. Like, this whole thing is kind of stupid, and I never liked this. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I know what you mean. And I will admit that I often take a no holds barred approach to it. But honestly, I've said it many times on my videos on my channel that for me, this is kind of like self-defense. Because if you look at, as I say, some of the abuses that people use religion to excuse their trespasses against others. I mean, I'm a lesbian. I have plenty of other LGBT friends all across that spectrum. And then there's the people who agree with birth control, for example, the people who don't think that we ought to be a religious nation here in the United States, all of that. We do need to defend ourselves against the people who would force religion on the rest of us. It seems like a lot of theists, especially Christians, have this view of what the country should look like, the way your neighbors should be behaving, what they should believe, the way they should dress and interact with each other, that it should be mom, dad, 2.5 kids and a dog and all of that stuff. This sort of 1950s stylized version of the United States. And that a lot of that seems to have a religious tone to it. And like the way I see it, everyone should be just treating each other with respect, being nice to each other, and tolerating each other's differences. But they don't seem to see it that way. And if I want to live the way I want to live, the way I'm most comfortable, and the way I'm not hurting other people, I have to defend myself against them. Have to.
Yeah, you know, like my experience of it was the Christian way of life was like the best way of life. Like if you try to do these other things, if you go down these other paths, Kate, then you know you're gonna fail in some way. Your sins are gonna catch up to you. Your temptations are gonna catch up to you, right? Like if you're having sex before marriage, or if you're you know, engaging in homosexual relationships and like, you know, stuff like that, then like ultimately you're not going to live your best life. Like that's kind of the way it was framed to me. But I think I agree with you in that there's an evangelical component to that says, no, not only is this the best way of life, but I want you to have this way of life, and you need to have this way of life, or else you're literally going to burn for eternity in a lot of those kinds of cases. And yeah, that sucks. And there's definitely, I was hearing something recently about how Christian nationalism it has been on the rise lately in some circles. Like, and it's not something that's been going down. It's actually the rhetoric has been kind of coming up more, and it still retains kind of a popularity. I don't know if there's more people getting involved, but you know, there's definitely stories you can read now about some of the influences and stuff, especially if we're talking about our education. Oh gosh, the recent abortion bill stuff. Don't even get me started on that stuff in Georgia. But yeah, you're definitely right. There is a political influence that's happening that we definitely should talk about more.
Well, okay, granted, completely tongue-in-cheek, but I've been telling people that I engage in the best birth control. Every woman should be a lesbian, especially the hotties.
I like that. That's really good. That's really awesome.
I mean, okay, granted, my sense of humor is not for everybody, but I find it amusing.
I know, that's great. That's great. I just want to remind people who are watching, this is a live call-in show. If you want to talk to Kate right here, the number is on the screen if you're in our chat. So definitely check us out. We got a couple lines here. So you've been doing some more projects and stuff. Do you see yourself as a content creator? Like, is the debunking thing, is that just your thing? Is that something you just want to keep doing till the cows come home? Or is there other kinds of projects you want to get into? Or what's up with that? Like, are you looking into anything else, or just... keep on.
Well, I am actually working on an animated project, a very large animated project. For those of you who aren't subscribed to my channel, what the heck's wrong with you? You should be. But if you are, you know that I animate. I animate quite a bit. I use 3ds Max, a really old copy of 3ds Max, but it's what I can afford. And so I'm working on a narrative fiction project. It's very sort of sci-fi, retro, space opera, Buzz Lightyear, Spaceman Spiff, Flash Gordon, Buck Rogers kind of thing. And I will actually be putting out a casting call at some point when I'm ready. So if anyone out there can act and you want to be in this project, I have 6 speaking parts so far. So we'll see.
Yeah, put me down on that list. I'd be interested.
So that is a project I'm working on. And one thing I have to keep reminding people is that as much as you only see me on YouTube online, I do have a life outside of it. I do more than just this. So yeah, I mean, I play a lot of virtual reality. If you know the game Spark, join me. It's an absolute blast. And I rollerblade. I have a gaming night that I might be late for if I'm on this still. So appreciate that I'm making that sacrifice for you guys. And bunches of other stuff. So yeah, as far as the channel right now, I mean, yeah, debunking stuff has been my format for quite a while. I have been thinking about branching out, but I'm not really sure what to do. I'd like to be a little more involved in, say, collaborations with other YouTubers, podcasts, and live streams like this one, that sort of thing. But I don't really have any immediate plans to change my format or to do anything particularly new. I maybe branch out on topics a little bit, but I'm always worried that my viewers who are so used to nothing but atheism content will rebel a little and say, hey, this isn't what I signed on for. So it's kind of a balancing act there.
Yeah, I definitely get that. Like if Truth Wanted suddenly changed format tomorrow and we did some sort of, I don't know, if we became an animated weekly show or something, I'm sure people would freak out about that too. Yeah, there's definitely the balance of trying to get your audience what you want, but also do the kind of thing you want to do and stuff. And so I'm glad to have you on, and thanks. And I do appreciate your sacrifice of your game night tonight. We'll try not to keep you too long.